backdrop here at Daytona, and away we go for the first time. Nicholas Porcel, Sean.
Looks like most get through unscathed. Look at that, there's Reed Gibson. A big move at the inside line of Dom's, possibly a little bit of contact.
Now, as we've got three wide action going through turns 1 and 2.
And they're underway. Eric Hahn takes a nice jump. Wilson hasn't let him go very far.
Go out here for Circuit Spa Francorchamps. Alex Johnson's off to a brilliant start there.
Just how oddly shaped this one is. We saw in the background Eric Hahn go for a bit of a swing, and he's gone and he's over.
New stuff. Cody Graham is the one-on-one up into second place. Alex Johnson 6/10 lead at the moment.
They're dicey up front. There's Andrew Kessel, Justin Sang.
They are ready to go. The lights are out, and away we go for the very first time here at Oklahoma International Circuit. Finley Fitzsimmons. Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to the largest touring car series in North America, the Alpha Touring Challenge. My name is Mason Heimbaugh with Team Goon Squad, bringing you the action here tonight, 1080p, 60 frames a second, as we always do, gearing up for an incredible race here at Watkins Glen International, racing the Cup layout, which makes things, I think, even more exciting, as today marks, I think, for Team Goon Squad, the largest field that we have ever covered here on the Team Goon Squad network. A record-breaking 43 drivers in total in this field here today. And because of the size of the field and the size of this course and the particular layout that we are on here today, the layout was, well, the qualifying layout was changed specifically for today's race. They decided that they would do a 5-lap lone qualifying instead of the traditional 15-minute open qualifying where everyone's on the track, and this decision was ultimately made yes, here it is. So, this decision was made because with around 35 drivers on this track, there would be about 2 seconds between each car if they were distributed perfectly evenly between one another. So, 2 seconds between each car is definitely not a terrible amount of wiggle room, and also got to remember the fact that these were based on a 35 driver field. So you can imagine that that number could be a lot smaller than, oh boy, Mark Crawford, the 504, getting onto the curb and still fighting to get back control of that Honda, and finally able to do so, but not without having definitely scraped off quite a bit of rubber after sliding around the track for that long. But Mark Crawford and a few other drivers going to be among some of the first to set the first laps here today. Mark Crawford, John Lazan, Matt Zepka, Mark Darnell, and a handful of other drivers, but an astonishing 43 drivers here in this field today is just incredible. We're going to definitely have an interesting time up here in the booth, trying to make sure that we keep track of all of the action as it develops around the field. But here it is, drivers starting to put in their first times here today and set in the first official times for the race. So Matt currently at the very tippy top of provisional pole, a 117.07. It is currently the time to beat Logan McKenzie, the second closest competitor to that, as we watch Micah Hendricks get a big slide. And it seems like a lot of drivers are experiencing the same kind of situation, if you will. I'm not sure if it's the the temperature of the track. And speaking of which, we can actually take a quick look at that real quickly. 64 degrees Fahrenheit is the current track temperature, so I would say that's definitely a pretty cool track. 63 degrees is the ambient temperature. So, I mean, it's a great day for racing. I will say a fantastic night for racing, and just a little cool on that track, so drivers definitely going to be looking for that grip as much as they possibly can. And again, with this being a lone qualifying instead of the open qualifying, which we traditionally see here for the Alpha Touring Challenge, it's no surprise that a lot of these guys are going to be able to really focus and just hone in on their laps here. Excuse me. As out of the 40-plus drivers that we have, 30 of which have set an official time here today, only 2 drivers, by my count, have not made their way onto the track yet. It looks like... Yeah, so with that being said, folks, there is a lot of drivers out on this field, and with how close the gap, or how close the pace is between this field is absolutely incredible. You can see it on the left-hand side of your screen. The top 7 all in, well, now top 8, all in that 116 region, and the 117s go all the way from 9th all the way down to 24th. So 24 driver, or not 24, but a large portion of this field within a second of each other is just absolutely incredible, and the size of this field is just astonishing in a lot of ways. Micah Hendricks, the number 1 machine, now the man to beat with a 116.18 as his best time, and just 1/10 behind that sits James Carr in that number 19 machine. So we're going to see if James is going to be able to produce anything for himself, as Micah Hendricks with Team Curb Your Enthusiasm Autosport continues to try and rack up some points here today. And excuse me, as I just noticed this, it looks like Trading Paints is still having some issues, or at least maybe I didn't fix it properly. I'm not 100% certain, because that's not showing the correct... that's not showing the correct paint scheme here on Micah Hendricks' machine. So that does look a little off here. So we can try and fix this, folks. Excuse me. So we're going to see if we can try and fix that here in the background while that happens. So far, Micah Hendricks still the man to beat. I mean, the next closest driver is Xiao Lu, and he's only 1/100th of a second behind Micah at this point in time. So Xiao's looking mighty fine at this moment. James Carr in that 3rd place position. With a 116.27, Logan McKenzie, who we're watching now in the 04 machine, 116.44. James Carr, there it is, across the line, a 115.9, the first driver to complete a full entry, or the first driver to get a 115 here amongst the field, and he's satisfied with that. He's going to take that back down to the pits and see, well, and also drivers only having 5 laps to qualify with, so they don't exactly have the entire time to stay out here on track and do as they normally would. All right. Well, it seems like... Oh, man, it really doesn't look like... Well, folks, it seems to be that there was a bit of an issue. Well, folks, as it seems to be that, well, Trading Paints recently had a bit of an issue where paint schemes were kind of getting jumbled up between each other. So if cars don't look the way that they're supposed to, that is an issue I hope to fix after tonight, but unfortunately does not look like we're going to be able to right at this time. So we're going to have to power through it for today, unfortunately, but hopefully it should make do for the time being. Dom Savio that we're watching with currently a 1:16.9 is his current best time. Going to see if he can try and improve on that time here. The last lap that he made across the checkered line was his best time so far. So we'll see if he's able to find any improvements here on this track this time by. Currently, drivers seeing lap times pretty consistently in that 1:16 range, 1:16, 1:17. And frankly, the fact that the entirety of this field is practically identical in pace is just phenomenal to me in a lot of ways. It is absolutely incredible, the competition that exists within the Alpha Touring Challenge, and it only continues to get better the longer that we stick around here with the Alpha Touring Challenge and the folks here, the better that the action seems to get, and the more exciting the races seem to get as the seasons go on. So with this being the second race of Season 9, last week we went to Virginia International Raceway, VIR, and we saw Micah Hendricks come away with the win there, and a very impressive win at that, a 16-second lead over the rest of the field, or over second place, I should say, and it was an impressive performance by Micah Hendricks. So with Micah Hendricks kind of setting the tone heading into this week here at Watkins Glen, a little bit of an easier kind of, I would say an easier kind of layout than what we saw last week at Virginia. The layout there was one that I have not raced on before, with it going a little bit more into the infield, I guess you could say. That was a very fun race, and if you haven't caught any of the action from that, definitely go back and check that out, as it was a lot of good action all around. But at this moment, only 2 minutes remaining left in qualifying, and just a handful of drivers left out here on the track. So I don't expect much to happen here. We'll see if Brian Inaki as well as Landon Patmore are going to be able to pull off a little bit of an improvement here, get themselves out of that, out of the 30s, and get a little bit further up the grid if they possibly can. But it's going to be a very interesting start to today's race. I mean, again, this is the largest field that we have covered here on the Team Goon Squad channel, so how this is going to go, your guess is as good as mine. So here it is, 10 seconds remaining, and pretty much right as Brian crosses the line here, that will conclude qualifying coverage, or at least qualifying here for these drivers. There it is, right on the dot, and that will do it for us here today. And much like we did last week, we're going to have to speed run this starting grid here this week as well. So let's go ahead and get right into it. James Carr, Micah Hendricks starting up in your front row, Zhao Lu as well as Francois Schink in your second row, Logan McKenzie, Edward Gorman in the third row, Dan McFarlane, Ian Bertolucci in your fourth row, Matt Zepka, Mark DeBauer in your fifth row, Jacob Wally, Connor Roccatella in your sixth row. Moving on down the lineup, Mike DeAlmeida, Raymond 2 in the seventh row, David Bauer, Damon Mitchell in your eighth row, Eric Statzer, John Lazan in the ninth row, Dom Savio, Pat Labros in your ninth row, Mark Crawford, Kurt Smith in your 11th row, Ben Aiken and Archie Williams in your 12th row. I realize I skipped the number there, but moving on. Trevor Lambert, Mark Darnell in your 13th row, Grant Dethy, Christian Austin, your 14th row, Cody Leach, Kat Wheeler in your 14th row, Brian Sohn, Brian Inaki in the 15th row, Landon Patmore and Jesse Olson in your 15th row. I meant to say 14th last time. Brian Ballard and Randall Ayers in your 16th row. Moving on down again, we see Luke Filippone, James Allen in that 17th row, Josh Jabaruk, Zach Perry in the 18th row, Kevin Clark, Brian Saab in the 19th row, and Jay Davis rounding out the field here today. I think I probably messed up some row numbers there, but that's, you know what? We're fine. Everything is hunky-dory. Let's get into some of the racing action here. As we get get lucky with the timing, and here we go. The 5 red lights tick out, and here we go. The green flag drops. Let's see how this field is going to handle turn 1 here at Watkins Glen. Side by side for a majority of this field. 4 wide. Banging doors and quarter panels, trading paints all around. But so far, so smooth for a lot of this field, keeping things relatively clean. Hey, getting a little bit close to the edge there. And already big trouble here for Raymond, too. As we try and catch him here on our cameras. But Raymond, big trouble, blowing the engine on that 996 machine. That is going to call it here for Raymond, I would have to imagine. Hopefully he's going to be able to get back on the track here before too long. As right now, this is going to be a heat feature race. So this will be the heat race, or the sprint race, I should say. We will have 20 minutes out here on track before we end this one off and head into our 30-minute feature. So it is a mad dash all the way around, and just look at this field. I mean, wow. And it just doesn't end. It keeps going. It keeps going, folks. Absolutely incredible. Battles happening all over the place. 3 wide action heading off back into turn 1. Landon Patmore that we're locked on with currently, finding himself a little bit in the mix of all of that as well. But frankly, there is battles all over this racetrack. We're watching along with Trevor Lambert, the number 93 machine, currently sitting in that 19th place spot. Trying to navigate his way through the track through the field as best as he can. As there are drivers pushing the limits here today, and reasonably so. Micah Hendricks up in the front of the field, trying to get himself some distance between the rest of the pack. Francois Schink staying within a few tenths of a second behind Micah. And James Carr, Zhao Lu, and a few other drivers also in tow. Micah Hendricks, calm as a cucumber, not letting it get to his head. So let's take a look out the rear view and get a good picture, get a good view of these drivers trying to reel in the number 1 Audi machine. Micah Hendricks trying to scream his way down the long straightaway through the bus stop. Micah Hendricks, the Curb Your Enthusiasm Autosport driver, winning last week's race, off to a great start here tonight to come away with potentially a W here in the sprint race. Top 10 drivers will be inverted going into the feature event, so if he does come away with the win here in the sprint, he'll have to fight his way from 10th back up here again in order to come away, technically, I guess you could say, a 3-time winner. And only 2 races into the season, Micah Hendricks looking to come off strong here in the very beginning of season number 9 here for the Alpha Touring Challenge, as we tune back a little bit further to John Lazan, number 77, currently sitting in that 20th position. Again, folks, you'll have to excuse some of the incorrect paint schemes that are on these cars. Some cars have different drivers' paint schemes on them and so on and so forth. It is a weird situation. Brian Saab finding himself slowly dropping down the grid here a little bit, down to 38th here at the moment. Hopefully he'll be able to recover from that one as he passes, it looks like, Brian Inaki. Archie Williams, the 993 Australian, sitting here in 22nd at the moment, gets a little bit of clean air ahead of Christian Austin, Ben Aiken. Meanwhile, Austin Aiken side by side with one another as they head off into turns 1. Crawford also in the mixture as well, gets a little loose, keeps it clean. All of these drivers doing a phenomenal job with how crowded this racetrack really is right now. I mean, it is just absolute chaos. Let's ride on board here with Connor Acatella, currently sitting in that 10th place position, and just get a good look here. Getting a little ride on board there with Connor Acatella as he starts to see a little bit of pressure here from Ian Bertolucci. Jacob Wally as well, trying to reel himself into the mixture of things. The 827 machine slowly but surely getting to the tail of the 51, just up ahead of him. Meanwhile, Francois Schink, Edward Gorman, Logan McKenzie, and friends all duking it out here, going through the bus stop, almost going too wide there for a moment between Schink and Gorman. Francois able to stay out ahead of Edward Gorman. Gorman also having some phenomenal races here with the Alpha Touring Challenge. Francois Schink also showing some great dominance the past few races, including the first race that we had last week. Francois finishing third last week, and having about a 20-second gap between himself and Micah Hendricks last week. I'm sure he's probably going to be looking to improve upon that here this week, given the not so brutal track that we have here today in the form of Watkins Glen. Again, last week, Virginia International, a very tough and technical track, not one for the faint of heart. It is definitely one that will eat you up and spit you right back out. It is definitely a tricky track if you've never ventured to it before. But if you have been there and you know what to expect, you might be all right. And a lot of these drivers did a phenomenal job of making it look just absolutely easy. I've just realized that we haven't had the interval up this entire time, so I apologize to those of you that have been awaiting for that to happen. There it is on the left side of your screens. I do apologize for that. Oh, a big slide here. Who was that? I think that was Damon Mitchell. That was not Damon Mitchell. I'm not sure who that was. But already, only not even 10 minutes into the race, we've already seen a few drivers have to make their way down into the pits and slowly making their way back out, but a few incidents having occurred already, putting drivers into some tricky situations, and unfortunately, it's just, we unfortunately don't have enough cameras and eyeballs to keep an eye on everything happening on the track here, but we're trying our best up here in the booth as we see Connor Acatella go right through the grass after the bus stop, having to take some evasive maneuvers. Luckily able to recover from it. I'm sure he's going to have to give up a little bit of time there for cutting the course, but it shouldn't affect him too badly as he's able to keep out here and keep racing. Meanwhile, Zach Perry, Cat Wheeler are going to be side by side along with one another. Door banging happening between Mark Darnell and James Allen as they get into it with one another. Even a little further back beyond that, Cat Wheeler, Jesse Olsen going tooth and nail for that 24th place position. Eric Statzer, meanwhile, found himself in a little bit of a pickle. He's coming down, just now coming out of pit road, back out onto the track. Into the wall there. I think that was Dan McFarlane. And indeed it was. Just a little bit of a love tap to the wall, but still out here, still turning laps. As Ian Bertolucci and Mark DeBauer go side by side for a moment there. Ian able to inch out just a little bit ahead of Mark for the time being as we come down the back straight and through the bus stop, where it's very, very easy to put yourself into the wrong spot heading through that bus stop, and you can definitely find yourself losing a spot or two, having to recover through the grass or by other means. This is pod racing. Yeah, I would have to say, without a doubt, this is as close as you're going to get to pod racing, at least in this generation. And I got to say, it is quite exciting watching a field of this size and of this caliber just really put on an incredible race here so far. And with under 10 minutes left to go before we see the end of our sprint race, it is quite amazing how close the action has been with this field. And I mean, just wherever you look on this track, there's cars just everywhere. I mean, you can see it in the bottom right-hand side of your screen as well. Just that small region of the track that doesn't have any race cars on it, but the rest of it is just to the brim with traffic right now, and it is just a pleasure to see. Jacob Wally, David Bauer, that's who we're watching with right now. So we see an incident pop up on our screen here. We've got Grant Durfee finding himself off in the grass here, and that's exactly, I think that's probably the result of a little bit of an error going through the bus stop, potentially. At least I would have to imagine. So we see Archie Williams have to recover himself as well. Meanwhile, the battle for 25th continues on between Landon Padmore and Mike De Almeida. Just a few tenths of a second between these two drivers as they fight tooth and nail. And I gotta tell you, folks, this is definitely not going to be an easy track for passing to happen here. You really gotta set yourself up in the right spot. Really have the right momentum to try and make it happen. I mean, this is a really, I don't want to say a high-speed track, but it's one that you really don't find yourself getting off the throttle too often. I mean, you have the bus stop, you have turn one. And, I mean, there's just not a whole lot of spots on this track where you're slowing down to set yourself up for a position for passing. And Francois Schenck getting a little bit of pressure here from Edward Gorman, as he is right on the tail trying to close the gap. And there you see Gorman. I mean, he's looking to that inside. He's trying to get right to the inside door of Francois here. Here he does. But now the upcoming left-hander, oh boy, they tap wheels for a moment. Francois is going to have the advantage with the inside line. And Edward Gorman's going to have to go wide there, but Edward, he's going to commit. He's going to stay right there, going right through the pit road entry as well. Not quite going to be able to make it happen, but he stuck his nose there. He tried to stick with it, and he committed. And Francois Schenck just was able to keep that pace up and able to walk it away there for the time being. Meanwhile, just a little further back in the 11th place, Connor Roccatella holding off David Bauer, Jacob Wally. Logan McKenzie, Matt Zepka, both having a little bit of a bout here. As McKenzie with team, excuse me. As McKenzie with Team Yellow Flag Motorsports, I had to double check myself there for a second, make sure I wasn't going to say the wrong team name. But anyway, McKenzie trying to pull himself up into the top 5 as Zepka's doing a good job of playing the role of defense and just keeping himself out in front. But as the race goes on here with about a minute left to go, you got to wonder if anyone's going to be dialing it up here and try to pull something off with this final minute remaining. So Micah Hendricks, I mean, if he can keep this up here, well, I mean, he really doesn't have much else to do, but this will make him a two-time winner already, 2 races in to Season 9 of the Alpha Touring Challenge, and he's got one race win and now, theoretically, 1 sprint race win to his name, and having to start in 10th place for the feature, I don't think he's going to have too much struggles here, but we'll see. Given that it has really not been very easy to pass here. The current hard charger of the race goes to Zach Perry, the number 56 machine, who's made his way up 18 spots from where he started up into 22nd. So that goes to show, folks, I mean, it's not impossible, but it's not going to be very easy either. And I think in some cases for some of these drivers, being able to get around some traffic that might have had an incident, they spun out, whatever the case might be, definitely taking those into consideration as well. So Zach Perry still can't take it away from him. He is the hardest charger of the race, but it definitely is still not an easy thing to accomplish, especially with the checkered flag being waved. Wrap things up. So Micah Hendrick comes away with that W as the rest of the field tries to work their way back around and finish this one out and get themselves ready for the main event. A lot of drivers having a good showing here today, and another good showing as well for some of the newcomers here to the series, some of the new teams. Team Seattle iRacing with their driver Zhao Lu coming away in that 8th place spot, having a very, very good day here for himself. Trevor Lambert, another one of his teammates that's also here tonight, also having a good race here for himself. But that is just one of many teams that have done a phenomenal job here tonight for the sprint race as we gear up for our main feature event. But right now we've got a little bit of a warm-up session before we kick things off and get ourselves ready to go for our feature event. And I think... No, okay. Does not look like we're going to be doing a little bit of a shorter interview for our sprint race winner here today. But that does not mean that we won't have a post-race interview for our feature race winner as well. So we will get into that very, very shortly. We're going to take a couple minutes here to take a minute to gather our breaths and get ready ourselves for our feature event. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere, folks, as we get ourselves ready to kick off 30 minutes here for our feature event for race number 2 of the Alpha Touring Challenge, season number 9 here at Watkins Glen International. Alrighty, folks, and that's going to do it for our warm-up session. The driver's going to now take it across the line, get themselves ready to go as we gear up for our main event. 30 minutes here at Watkins Glen International Racing, the Cup layout. Let's go ahead and get into our new starting grid. Mark DeBauer, Ian Bertolucci in our first row, Zhao Lu, Dan McFarlane in our second row, Matt Zepka, Logan McKenzie in the third row, Edward Gorman, Francois Schink in our fourth row, James Carr, Micah Hendricks in the fifth row, David Bauer, Jacob Wally in our sixth row. Moving on down the grid, we have Connor Acatella, John Lazan in the seventh row, Pat Labros, Kurt Smith in our eighth row, Mark Crawford, Christian Austin in our ninth row, Mark Darnell, Ben Aiken in our 10th row, James Allen, Zach Perry in the 11th row, Jesse Olson, Kat Wheeler in our 12th row. Moving on down the grid further, Landon Patmore, Mike De Almeida in the 13th row, Randall Ayers, Josh Jabaruk in our in our 14th row, Luke Philippone, Trevor Lambert in our 14th row, Brianson, Grant Dethy in our 15th row, Archie Williams, Brian Ballard, and we are out of time as we have to get into the action. And here we go. The lights are out and away we go once again for the feature event. Alpha Touring Challenge Season number 9, and there it is, a great look of the field as we head off into turn 1. Drivers looking to get as much room between each other as they possibly can here. Blimp a little off, a little further than we'd like it to be at this moment, but the driver's doing a good job getting off the line and getting into the action here. Some side-by-side action and some also even nose-to-tail action as we head a little bit further up the grid. And look at this field scrambling down the back straightaway, getting ready to come into the bus stop. Some drivers going 2 wide, maybe even 3 wide in some niche cases. But so far, so smooth for a good chunk of the field. Oh man. Back up at the front of the field, that is where the action is getting even dicier. 2 wide, almost too deep. And a big push here from Dan McFarlane to Mark DeBauer as we come down the back straight. Oh, Ian trying to do everything in his power to stay out in front of this pack. Mark DeBauer staying within just a few tenths of a second of the leader. A little further back beyond that, I mean, there is just action all over the field, especially right at the very start. It is just chaos all the way around this track, no matter where you look. And it looks like we've had a big incident involving Dom Savio. Let's see if we can get a quick crash report on this one. See how this one, oh boy. Oh, right into the front end. Oh my, that was a nasty wreck. And excuse me, folks, as we have to fix things a little bit on our end here. Timing and oh boy, speaking of timing, it is calamity through the bus stop as Mark DeBauer gets pushed sideways. Now gonna have to take the long way around, and it is just calamity throughout this field. As now there it is. Oh boy. So much is happening that now my GPU is freaking out. As things slowly try and settle out as much as they can, and we try up here in the booth to, oh man, try and keep this coverage going as best as we can. And a large, well, I don't want to say a large, but a good portion of the field going to be coming down into pit road, it seems like, in an attempt to get some damage worked out. And speaking of damage, it is more happening at the front of the field. Multiple drivers getting sent off and into the grass. This is definitely not ideal. Just one small incident, and that is all it takes to ruin someone's race, especially in a field this large, where anything can happen in the blink of an eye. As we're watching with Cat Wheeler, John Lazan at this moment, battling for that 29th position, and oh boy, getting a little too close for comfort there. And I just realized that I've been talking to no one this entire time, as I've been talking to myself here for a little while. Hopefully that doesn't happen again here, but right now we've got Connor Acatella right on the tail of Cody Leach, banging doors with him as we head through the S's, and Man, oh man. Within only just a few tenths of each other, I mean, one small error is going to mean a catastrophe for any of these drivers. Like we've already seen already that has happened with our leaders, finding themselves in a very, very unfortunate predicament. And unfortunately for those racers, for those drivers who were involved in that larger incident we saw a little bit ago, Zhao Lu, Dom Savio, Francois Schink, Pat LaBroche, Trevor Lambert, Ben Aiken have all retired from the race. Excuse me, I take back the last two. Ben Aiken and Trevor Lambert are still here, but the other drivers I mentioned have retired from the race, and they have taken those cars back behind the wall. And that is going to do it for them here tonight. So unfortunate to see those retirements happening, but it is understandable, the justification for it, because those wrecks were definitely not good, to say the least. Thanks, Ray. You always have a way with words. But a big thank you, a big shout out to everyone who's tuning in here tonight, enjoying the action here for round number 2 of the Alpha Touring Challenge. It has been some exciting racing thus far. Excuse me. As there are a few close battles happening around the track that are under a tenth of a second or more, or less, I should say. That would be the correct way to pronounce that. But nonetheless, out of the 40 drivers, or excuse me, 38 drivers still racing, the action has been non-stop between this field, and it has been exciting to watch through and through. We're watching Randall Ayers and Archie Williams, or Josh Jaberick, currently fending off for that 12th place position at the moment. And you can see just how tough it is to manage any sort of passing here. We can ride on board with Brian Sohn for just a moment to kind of get a good idea. So as Brian Sohn, I mean, he charges down the straightaway, getting almost alongside Raymond too. It is just not an easy feat to get a pass attempt here. And for drivers that, even for drivers who start in fairly ideal positions, I mean, Micah Hendricks starting in that 10th place spot, he's dropped all the way to 27th here, a 17 position deficit from where he started. And, you know, it just goes to show that it doesn't always work out in your favor every time. And even coming away with a win from the sprint race, Micah's gonna have his hands full here for the next roughly 17 minutes. We are about halfway into our feature event, and Ian Bertolucci has really kind of found himself in a perfect situation. I mean, I don't even know how he managed to do this, how he managed to get this far from the rest of the field, but here he is, all in his lonesome, over 5 seconds from himself to the next closest driver, Matt Zepka, in that second place position. I mean, you can see him all the way down there at the end of this straight as he's about to head through the bus stop. So Matt Zepka and the rest of these drivers behind him have quite a bit ahead of them in order to track him down if they intend to do so. But meanwhile, the rest of the field, they've got their own fish to fry, as they've got a just cluster of drivers to have to manage to work around. And man, just in this sort of situation, in these sort of races, I wouldn't even know what to do with myself as far as how I would want to race, where I'd want to be on the track, and it is definitely not an easy thing to be in a field of this size. And keep it clean this entire time. I mean, a lot of these drivers have done a phenomenal job of keeping things relatively smooth. I mean, I would say the sprint race was probably a little bit smoother for the field than this feature has been, given the incidents that we've seen already. But having now passed that halfway mark, a lot of the drivers that have managed to avoid any sort of major incidents here, I would imagine. Oh boy, speaking of major incidents, what in the world is happening back here? Mark Crawford gonna find himself in a bit of a predicament as he takes his car back down to pit road to, I assume, get some repairs done. Watching Randall Ayers, Raymond 2, as well as Luke Filippone is also involved in the mix. The battle for 14th has been developing for quite some time. And Matt Zepka in second place, going to start to see a little bit of pressure from James Carr as well as Edward Gorman. Well, it looks like iRacing has fixed at least some of the paint schemes here tonight. Edward Gorman's definitely doesn't look right unless he changed it recently. James Carr's looks correct. It's actually showing the breakfast for dinner logo, so that's at least somewhat correct. I'm going off on a tangent here. I'm still flabbergasted by trading paints being annoying. But anyway, what's not annoying is all the battles happening out on track and how close it is between some of these drivers. For example, Eric Statzer and Brian Inaki, both side by side heading into turn 1. Eric going to make that an easy pass up into 19th for himself. Not too much of a hassle there from either party. These close battles that have been going on for so long, you really gotta wonder how this is kind of affecting the mindset of some of these drivers here tonight, and how taxing it can be mentally and physically for drivers to stay in these battles for this long. I mean, it's obviously going to be fun. It's going to be a great time, but it's going to be challenging. And well, as the name implies of the series, I think that's kind of the entire point. Landon Patmore doing a phenomenal job keeping the pace up with Mark Darnell and Josh Javerick right behind Javerick. I keep saying that incorrectly. I'll get it right eventually. Landon Patmore, though, doing a phenomenal job holding on to that 10th place position and trying to make sure that he doesn't let anyone else get into that top 10 here. So just keeping up that defense as best as he can. Matt Zepka as well for Curb Your Enthusiasm Autosport, 490 driver, holding on to that second place position. And he's had James Carr and Edward Gorman on his tail for quite some time. Has done well with the pressure. 3 wide action, though. At least it looks like 3 wide action. Micah Hendricks, Dan McFarlane, and Grant Dethy. And 10 minutes left to go before we see the end of the feature event, before we determine who's going to come away with that win. But right now, I would have to say that Ian Bertolucci is definitely a strong favorite, heading to at least come across the line and win this thing with less than 10 minutes left to go. I mean, Ian's got a fairly comfortable gap to work with. It's definitely started to dwindle as this race has gone on. And I mean, look at James Carr just right on the bumper of Matt Zepka. And Edward Gorman going to come down into pit road here with less than 10 minutes left to go. But what's more incredible to me, folks, is just how close. I mean, we'll take a look at the nose camera here from James Carr, and you can see just how close to the rear end he is to Matt. And that just, the level of trust that you have to have with your fellow competitors to be able to follow this closely with one another, it has to be quite high. Fantastic driving from both of these guys, and really this entire field has done a phenomenal job with today's race. Patmore, Mark Darnell side by side, at least for the moment. Patmore going to get right up to the rear end of Mark. As they start to head through the S's here, Landon's going to look to that inside to get right along the door of the 83 Audi, and is going to have to get that momentum up a little more. Doesn't quite have enough to make it work this time. Mark Darnell does a fantastic job, and Christian Ost in a big incident here, looks like with another driver as well. James Allen potentially. Trying to get himself, oh yeah, he's got major issues to that front end, so he's going to take it back down to pit road. We'll see if we can take a quick gander. Well, actually, no. Last time I did that, it broke everything. So we won't do that, unfortunately. Grant Deathy, John Lazan, they're both going to have a little bit of a fight towards the tail of the field. Landon Patmore, Jesse Olsen, both up here fighting it out for that 6th place position at this moment, and starting to see some of these battles really start to heat up here a little bit. As we get closer and closer to that checkered flag, I think the intensity for a lot of these drivers is only increasing, as they all want to try and gain as many points as they can to get the best finishing result that they can as well. Just how tough passing is here, you are really pushing, I mean, through every inch of this track. And here goes Matt Zepka. Speaking of pushing, finally has been able to reel in the leader, Ian Bertolucci, with less than 5 minutes left to go. Will this be the moment that Matt Zepka has been waiting for? He's got plenty of time to be able to make something happen here. He's also got James Carr along with him to potentially make something happen here. Battle for the lead continues to only get heated. James Carr, oh man, he's flashing the lights. That was definitely a close one here. Matt Zepka getting slowed up as he had a bit of an error going through the bus stop, and now Carr is going to take advantage of that mistake, getting right up to the tail end of Zepka, lining himself up to potentially try and make a pass here, or at least stay in that draft of Zepka. Yeah, setting himself back up out of the final turn. Onto the front straight. He's right there along with him. Will he be able to kind of slingshot his way around? He's given Zepka the push. And that definitely was not the result that Carr was looking for, I don't think. But he's going to navigate through the S's here again and try and reel in Zepka. And Ian Bertolucci, he's going to be enjoying that little bit of airtime that he's now got between himself and Matt, but it's not much. It can definitely be lost in the blink of an eye. Bit further up ahead, Raymond 2, Jesse Olsen, they're going to fight it out for that 7th place spot. Raymond doing a phenomenal job here. He's been in some peculiar situations and has done a phenomenal job of just staying calm through all of it and keeping up the pace here all race long. Ian Bertolucci, with almost a minute left to go, has Matt Zepka right on his heel once again. James Carr along in the mix for this battle for the lead. The top three all within a tenth of a second of one another. Zepka looks to the outside of Bertolucci. James Carr also seeing a window of opportunity maybe open up here. Zepka gets a slide through the bus stop. That's going to open the door for James Carr, and Ian Bertolucci's going to drive it on away. But I think there's still enough time left that these guys are going to take it one more lap around before we end things off here tonight. For Bertolucci, he's got one more lap to go to finish this one out. For Matt Zepka and James Carr, they've got one more opportunity to fight for the lead. Even a little further back as well, some drivers still scrapping for the remaining positions here. Zepka able to inch out the lead here as they come down the back straight through the bus stop, but Ian going to be the one to retake it. This is going to be it, folks. Zepka trying to scream his way down the last straight that they have. I don't know if he's going to be able to get anything out of this one here. There's too much distance between them, but will he be able to pull something out of the hat? I don't think it's going to be quite enough this time, as James Carr's also right on his heel. And with under a tenth of a second between Ian Bertolucci and Matt Zepka, Zepka's gonna end it off with a rather interesting way of celebrating that one. I'm sure he was probably just relieved that it was over, but a incredible finish from the top three with under a tenth of a second between each of them. It is just absolutely incredible. Micah Hendricks, Luke Filippone also going to have a similar finish across the line between themselves, as the remainder of the field also works their way across the checkered line and finishes out what has been a fantastic and long, seemingly long race here at Watkins Glen. Jacob Wally, Mike Dale, Mida that we're tuning along with here at the moment make their way out of the final turn and across the checkered line. That will wrap up their race here today. And now that we've got post-race results here, we can take a look at that and get ourselves ready for some post-race interviews. And looks like the first driver that we're going to have up here in the booth is going to be Mr. Matt Zepka, coming away with that second place spot. Matt, it was a fantastic day here at Watkins Glen. I would say it was interesting. It was a lot smoother for the sprint race than it was for the feature in the opening laps. I mean, kind of walk me through a little bit what you think some of the issues might have been here in the feature as opposed to the sprint, where we were just seeing some big pileups happening, just kind of one after the other, and it seemed to be it was very different than what we saw from the sprint race. What do you think kind of contributed to that here today?
Hey, Mason. I think it was a few things. First of all, congrats to Ian. Good win. But it was, I think the first sprint went too cleanly, if that makes sense. And then the temperatures of the track were like, I don't want to say double, but it was pretty hot comparatively. And then I think the clean first heat and the inverse grid, like people weren't pulling ahead as much. And then that first sprint being so clean, I think also lended people to trust each other a little bit more. And a lot of the stuff that I was witnessing was a lot of aggressive moves on like still little cold tires on a little hot track, and it's just a little too much of a lot of things, and just kind of added up to these bigger incidents.
Well, and you compound that with having 43 drivers on the track all at one time. I think that definitely makes things. It's a recipe for disaster, and I think it was just, well, I don't want to say recipe for disaster. It was a recipe for things to happen, and we ultimately saw that happen. But, I mean, Matt, even despite all of that, you managed to come away with a podium here for the feature event. I have to pull up where you finished for the sprint race here real quick. But, I mean, coming away second for the feature, sixth for the sprint race. I mean, you had a fantastic day here for yourself and for your team. What kind of motivation, or what kind of what does this give you going into next week as we look forward to? Oh gosh, I have to find the schedule now again. As we head to,
I think it's Brands Hatch.
You're right. If I can find it here, Brands Hatch. You are correct. So after, a very chaotic night here at Watkins Glen, heading to Brands Hatch, I would say probably a little, maybe not quite similar racing style to what we saw here tonight, but what's kind of your expectations and goals heading to Brands Hatch next week?
I think just keeping the pace up a little bit. I took last season off a little bit, and I'm back, and it's nice to, I felt more in the groove of this race. I mean, obviously I benefited from some other people being out of the groove that I didn't get here just on pure pace, but I think just keeping it consistent, keeping it clean, and going from there. And telling Ian to please, you can only show up if you're slower than me. That's the rule now.
Well, Matt, you had a fantastic night here, not only for yourself but for your team as well. But before you end things off here, and before you head off and celebrate with your team and fellow drivers, is anyone you want to give a shout out to or thank before you go?
Thank you, Micah and Francois and Mark for the teamwork, and Francois for the setups, and Micah for the tips of braking a little bit earlier in the outing. Shout out to Ian and James for good racing. That was fun. Shout out to David Bauer. He dove it, I think, in the middle, free wide. I mean, he didn't crash at this point. It was later on, but that was a move, and I was kind of cussing under my breath, but he got it done. Shout out to my girlfriend who puts up with me driving these cars. And shout out to you, the broadcaster, for broadcasting these. So thanks. And thanks to Bot for organizing, recruiting, and also shout out to all the new drivers and everyone who drove for the first time. I have a lot of shout outs, I'm sorry, but everyone who joined. I think 43 cars, I think, is our biggest grid. And a lot of the stuff that happened was fine, but I'm very happy to see a lot of people show up. I hope people had fun. Maybe it's a little not, but I hope people come back from Brands Hatch. I think that'll be fun.
I certainly agree. I hope to see more of these fields continue throughout the season, and hopefully get to see the competition continue to thrive here at Alpha Touring Challenge. But Matt, thank you as always for joining us up here in the booth, and for getting a chance to talk to you before you head out. And congratulations once again, and hopefully we get to do it again next week.
Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, so Matt Zepka coming away with that second place spot here tonight. Up next, James Carr coming in a little bit late, but He's here. He's ready. James, welcome to the booth. Congratulations on a third place finish here tonight. It definitely was not an easy one, but I mean, let's just both you and Matt and Ian for that matter. I mean, all three of you guys finished with under, I think it was like 0.12 or something like that between the three of you. And you guys just kept that pace up, that momentum up the entire time through the final few laps that you guys were real close to one another. And I mean, James, I mean, when you had Zepka pretty much right in your sights, you had a little bit of a moment going through the bus stop through, like, I think it was the second to last lap. You had a moment there that you could have snuck your way into that second place spot, or at least it looked like it. What was kind of running through your head in that moment? I mean, it was definitely a tooth and nail fight, and you were giving it 110%.
Yeah, that's a great point. I really wanted to continue that send through the carousel there, but I knew there was a huge gap behind me. There was like some 21 seconds behind me due to the little bit of chaos that happened there. But I knew no matter how early I got on the throttle or how late, I would never get that pace back coming out of the carousel. So I kind of had the hope that I could use Matt as my instrument of war and do some of the work for me. But unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. I didn't want to insert myself too much in that battle because, I was kind of praying that they would do a little damage to each other. But, ultimately, I'm not dissatisfied with third.
Yeah, I think a third place finish in a 40-plus car grid, I think that is definitely nothing to frown at. It's without a doubt. But having this kind of pace, this momentum for today, probably gives yourself and your team a lot of confidence going into next week to Brands Hatch. What's kind of your expectations going into next week? Have you fared well at Brands Hatch in the past, or is it something? Is it a track that you've never been to? What's kind of your goals for next week?
I have a lot of mixed history with Brands Hatch. I'm not too fond of it. I have some good IMPC battles with Matt there where we were trading wins and second places. I expect him to be top of the board for that one. If I can keep it off the grass and thus out of the wall, I think I'll expect at least the top 5 for myself. But I'd be happy with even finishing that race because it's a real weakness of mine, that track.
Well, hopefully we can keep that momentum up for yourself heading into next week. You did phenomenal here tonight, and I think that you'll do just fine. But James, before I let you go, and before you crack open a cold one and celebrate with your fellow drivers and teammates, anyone you want to give a shout out to before you go?
First and foremost, to the B4D and Second Breakfast team, I want to give a big shout out. We put a lot of laps into this one just to kind of figure out the best laps. Best sectors, best ways to do it, best setups. We did a lot of team testing on this one because, man, Micah, that guy is fast. Oh my lord, he is fast. And the second shout out would be Micah for keeping me motivated, so I appreciate that. And that's about all I got right now.
Well, James, thank you for joining us up here in the booth. And as always, we look forward to seeing you next week, and hopefully get to talk to you in a similar capacity next week.
Hey, fingers crossed.
Absolutely. All right, folks, so that's James Carr coming away with that second place finish. And last, certainly not going to be least here, the man of the hour, the newcomer, at least for myself, the first time that I've got to see Ian Bertolucci out here on the track, but coming away strong here tonight at Watkins Glen, coming away with that big W. Ian, welcome to the booth. Congratulations on your fantastic win here tonight. How are you feeling right now?
Thanks a lot, Mason. Well, first of all, English is not my first language, so if I came out, if I don't know how to articulate my words, so you guys apologize me. So I'm shaking a lot, to be honest. I did not expect to win on the race that I was P9, I think, and then suddenly I was second, and then I managed to pass. I think it was Mark de Boer. And then something happened behind. I was like, well, what happened? What happened, guys? So I was just trying to keep focusing on the track to try not to bleed the gap that we had. Like I had, I think, a 5-second gap. And I was like, well, these guys are coming, and gladly we had a good battle with Matt on the bus stop. and I'm feeling great. I really don't know what to say. I'm still shaking right now.
You know, and you have every right to, Ian. You did a fantastic job, and you put up a lot of great defense for both James and Matt behind you. You made it look easy, and I think this should definitely give you a lot of confidence going forward into the rest of the season. But I mean, you know, coming away, starting the race, not really sure where you're going to end up, and then coming away with a win, I'm sure is always a very surprising but welcome experience, and I think it was definitely a very well-deserved win for yourself here tonight, Ian. But looking forward to the rest of the season. I mean, you got a win in the bag now. What's kind of your ultimate goal for this season? Is it coming away with as many top 5s, top 10s, top 3s, whatever the case might be? What's kind of your goal for this season?
So I'm just an enthusiast. I don't plan to run. I can't run all the races because of the time slot. So I just hop on the races whenever I can. So, and whenever I like the track. Brands Hatch is one of my favorites, if not my favorite track. So I'm really hopeful to maybe achieve a top 5. So I don't know. It's a really good track. I like it a lot. And to race with these guys on ATC, it's always a pleasure. It's my 3rd race, and it was every race I do is really fun with these guys. So yeah, that's that.
Well, Ian, I want to thank you for taking your time to come up here and join us in the booth and have a conversation with us. I genuinely appreciate it. Not having, excuse me, let me choose my words here. Not having English as your primary language, and you know, having to do your best. You're doing a fantastic job, and you made the best of it. And Ian, I hope to get to see more of you out here because you are phenomenal to watch. And seeing both yourself and Zepka and Carr and the rest of this field battle it out, it was just absolutely phenomenal. So hopefully we get to see you next week at Brands Hatch, and I hope to get to talk to you again next week. Given the pace that we saw here tonight, I'm going to be looking forward to seeing you out there next week.
Thanks a lot, Mason. I would like to thank you for the broadcast, all the guys from the league, Logan, Matt, everyone, Micah, who is always winning, and yeah.
All right, Ian. Well, thank you again for joining us up here in the booth. Congratulations once again on your win. Absolutely incredible work. I look forward to seeing you next week and hopefully get to talk to you again.
Thanks a lot, mate.
Alrighty, folks, so that is going to do it for our coverage here tonight of round number 2 of the Alpha Touring Challenge, season number 9 here at Watkins Glen International. My name is Mason Heimbaugh with Team Goon Squad, bringing the action here tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed what you saw here tonight. If you did, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, catch all the action that we have here throughout the week. And, folks, I look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place, as we head to Brands Hatch to kick off round number 3. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Oh, Pearson gets into the 95 of Folks. Here comes the caution.
Flag is dropped here at Daytona, and away go for the first time. Nicholas Morcel, Sean.
Looks like most get through unscathed. Look at that, there's Reed Gibson. A big move at the inside line of Dom's, possibly a little bit of contact.
Now, as we've got 3 wide action going through turns 1 and 2.
And they're underway. Eric Hahn takes a nice jump. Wilson hasn't let him go very far.
Nice to go out here for circuit disqualifying Sean. Alex Johnson's off to a brilliant start there.
See just how oddly shaped this one is. We saw in the background Eric Hahn go for a bit of a swing, and he's gone and he's over.
New stuff. Cody Graham's the 1-on-1 up into 2nd place. Alex Johnson, 6/10 to lead at the moment.
They're dicey up front. There's Andrew Kessel, Justin Sang.
They are ready to go. The lights are out, and away we go for the very first time here at Okayama International Circuit. Finley Fitzsimmons.